Michael, funny how a name can hang heavy in the air, isn't it? Like it's not just a sound, but a weight, a shadow. And now here we are, staring at something no one ever really wants to talk about. Teeth. Simple, ordinary, taken for granted, until they're gone, until they hurt, until they remind you that you've neglected the one thing holding your smile together. People think teeth are just decoration, a part of the face you show the world, but they're so much more. They're a record, a diary written in enamel, each crack and stain telling a story about what you've swallowed, what you've endured, what you've ignored. Teeth. People think they're just there for chewing, for smiling, for showing the world you're fine. But they're more than that. They're records. Little white stones in your mouth, carrying every detail of how you've lived. You eat too much sugar, they remember. You grind them in your sleep, they remember. You neglect them, let them rot, they remember. They don't forgive. They don't forget. They're like silent witnesses stuck in your face, and every time you open your mouth, they testify against you. You think you can hide, but you can't. You cover your smile, you speak less, you hope no one notices, but deep down you notice. Every single day, and that shame, it grows heavier than the pain itself, because it's never just about teeth, is it? No, it's about the way you treat yourself. It's about self-respect, discipline, the care you give, or don't give, to the one body you're trapped in. You can polish the shoes, wear the expensive jacket, put on the perfect performance. But if you've neglected the little things that hold you together, the cracks will show. They always show. Teeth are honest, brutally honest, and they'll reveal whether you've cared or whether you've been careless. Think about it. When you lose a tooth, when one chips or aches, it's not just pain, it's a message. It's your body screaming that neglect has caught up with you. People dismiss it, shrug it off, numb it with a pill, hide it with a smile that never quite reaches their eyes. But the body knows. The mirror knows. And in the quiet moments, you know. Teeth are like little trophies of your discipline or your decay. Every cavity, every fracture, it's a story. Not about food, not about time, but about you. And what do people do when they're confronted with this truth? They laugh it off. It's just teeth. Just teeth. No, it's not just teeth. It's the symbol of whether you take yourself seriously or not. If you can't care for what's right there, staring back at you every morning, what else are you ignoring? What else are you letting rot quietly behind the curtain while you pretend everything's fine? Because the little things always become the big things, and by the time you notice, it's too late. That's how discipline works. It's not about the grand gestures. It's about the daily details, the things no one sees, but everyone eventually feels. When you're young, you think you're invincible. You think you can abuse yourself, push it off, deal with it later. Later becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next year. Next year becomes too late. And your teeth, those little soldiers, they collapse one by one, not from age, but from neglect. And you stand there wondering why, pretending you didn't see it coming. But you did. Deep down, you always did. Teeth don't break in silence. They warn you. The ache starts soft, the signs are gentle, but you chose not to listen. You chose convenience over care, excuses over responsibility. And now, here you are, paying the price. The discipline you refuse with your teeth, you refuse with everything. It's a pattern, a reflection. You don't brush, you don't floss, you don't check in. The same way you don't work on yourself. Don't face the ugly truths. Don't confront the habits killing you slowly. Teeth don't lie. They mirror your choices. Strong, clean, sharp. They show care, discipline, control. Broken, rotting, missing. They scream neglect, avoidance, weakness. They tell the world who you are. Even when your words try to tell a different story. And that's why teeth are more than bones in your mouth. They're the proof of what you've done with your time. The little things you didn't think mattered come back with teeth. Literally. You can replace a car, buy new clothes, even fake a personality. But these bones, they're yours. They belong to your story. You can't swap them out without the scars showing. And every scar whispers your truth, whether you want it revealed or not. Neglect never vanishes, it lingers. It waits in the shadows, patient, quiet, smiling at you while you pretend it isn't there. You think you can skip over the little duties, push aside the responsibilities, delay the choices that feel too small to matter. And yet those tiny, ignored moments always return. They come back bigger, heavier, louder. You see, neglect has a way of keeping score, and sooner or later it collects. It's not sudden, it's not dramatic. No, it's slow, creeping, like rot under fresh paint. You keep brushing over the surface, convincing yourself the problem's gone. But beneath it spreads, festers, eats away until one day the mask falls, and the decay laughs in your face. People imagine consequences as explosions, as big disasters that strike without warning. That's a comforting lie. The truth is much more unsettling. Consequences are whispers at first, warnings so small you almost convince yourself they don't exist. A skipped appointment, a lie to yourself, a promise broken quietly. But the pattern builds. Each time you look away, it grows. Each time you say, tomorrow, it sharpens its teeth. And when tomorrow finally runs out, you realize the monster you fed was made of your own neglect. You can numb it for a while, distract yourself with pleasures, hide behind noise, drown it out with excuses, but it always returns. It shows up in the body breaking down earlier than it should. It shows up in the dreams you never reached because you delayed too long. It shows up in relationships, in trust eroded, in respect that slipped away when you weren't looking. And you wonder why things collapse, why pain comes, why life feels unfair. But life isn't unfair. It's exact. It's precise. It returns what you've planted. And neglect. Neglect is a seed that always blooms into poison. Think of the people who spend years pretending everything is fine. They smile in public, laugh at the right times, keep the mask polished. But inside they know. The mirror knows. The silence at night knows. They can't escape that whisper, the one that reminds them of the things left undone, the duties abandoned, the care refused. It's a quiet torture, worse than the loud kind, because no one else can hear it. Only you, only the one who neglected. And that whisper grows until it screams. Neglect isn't lazy, it's lethal. It's the silent killer of potential. Every time you choose not to act, not to care, not to maintain, you invite collapse. And collapse doesn't arrive as a stranger. Collapse is an old friend you've been feeding for years, showing up on the day you least expect, knocking on your door with a grin. And by then, it's too late to run. The bill is due, and the collector doesn't negotiate. The cruelest part, you always knew. Deep down, you always knew. That ache in your chest, that thought you tried to drown, that warning sign you dismissed. It wasn't ignorance. It was avoidance. You told yourself stories, wrapped yourself in lies, but somewhere in the quiet of your mind, you saw it. You felt it. You just hoped it wouldn't catch up. And yet, it always does. That's the curse of neglect. It's patient, but it never forgets. So what happens? People break down, not because of what happened yesterday, but because of what they failed to do years ago. They weep over consequences they authored themselves. They beg for mercy from a reality that never lied to them, never tricked them. It only reflected what they gave. That's the truth no one wants to face. Neglect writes the future in invisible ink. And by the time the words reveal themselves, the story is already written. And when it finally reveals itself, when the mask can't hold, when the decay crawls into the light, there is no pretending anymore. The world sees what you've ignored. You see what you've ignored. Neglect strips you bare, and it laughs, because you gave it everything it needed. You were the accomplice, the partner, the builder of your own downfall. And all it took was looking away, again and again, until there was nothing left to look at but the ruin. Pain in the body is never just about flesh and bone. It's a language, a code, a cruel little reminder that something deeper is wrong. You feel it in your teeth, in your back, in your chest, and you think it's physical, but no, it's a reflection. The body doesn't invent suffering out of nowhere. It echoes the truth you've been ignoring. You call it an ache, a symptom, an inconvenience, but it's really a confession. Every throb, every sting, every shiver is your body, whispering about the choices you've made, the lies you've told yourself, the weight you've been carrying. And most people don't want to hear it. They numb it. Pop a pill, take a drink, pretend it's nothing. They plaster silence over the screaming of their own body, but the silence never lasts. Because you can drown the noise for a moment, but you can't silence the truth forever. The body will speak again, louder this time, more vicious, more demanding. Until it doesn't whisper anymore, it roars. And by then, the damage is too obvious to ignore. That's the trick about pain. It's patient, but it's relentless. Look at the way people move through life. They break themselves in silence, grinding teeth in their sleep because of anxiety they never confront, carrying tension in their shoulders because they refuse to release the weight of disappointment, feeling fire in their stomach because they've been swallowing anger instead of facing it, Pain doesn't lie. It doesn't care about the mask you wear in public or the excuses you tell yourself at night. Pain is the truth written in nerves and bone. And when it comes to shame, oh, the body loves to betray you. You smile less because you're hiding. You slouch because you don't want to be seen. Your eyes dart away because you can't hold the gaze of someone who might see through you. That's pain too, not in the obvious bleeding or bruising, but in the quiet, invisible ways you shrink yourself. And you wonder why the weight feels unbearable. But it's not just the body. It's the soul trying to drag your attention back to what you've been avoiding. The cruelest part is that the body doesn't argue. It doesn't negotiate. It just delivers the truth, whether you're ready or not. You neglect it, it cracks. You abuse it, it breaks. You ignore it, it withers. And every moment you run from the signals, every time you look for a shortcut instead of the source, you dig yourself deeper. Pain is not the enemy, it's the messenger. The enemy is your refusal to listen. People say time heals all wounds. What a lie. Time doesn't heal what you refuse to face. Time only deepens it. A tooth hatch ignored becomes an infection. A skipped heartbeat becomes collapse. A tight chest becomes a coffin. And you stand there shocked, pretending it came out of nowhere, when deep down you knew. You always knew. Pain doesn't sneak, it warns. But warnings are only useful if you pay attention. The truth is, the body is loyal. It takes abuse, it takes neglect, it takes punishment, far longer than it should. But loyalty doesn't mean immortality. Eventually, it reaches the breaking point. And when it does, it's merciless. No plea, no prayer, no excuse can erase the years you spent ignoring the signs. That's why so many weep, not because the body betrayed them, but because they betrayed the body first. And here's the irony: pain is the greatest teacher, but no one wants to sit in its classroom. They drop out, escape, run to distractions. But the lesson waits, always waits. Because pain isn't there to destroy you. It's there to reveal you, to strip away the lies, and leave you staring at the raw truth underneath. The truth you've been avoiding in every mirror, in every quiet night, in every moment you refuse to stop and listen. So when the body screams, when the nerves burn, when the heart pounds too loud, it's not just biology, it's biography. It's your story, written in blood and bone, reminding you of the choices you've made. Every ache is a word. Every scar is a sentence. And together they form a book you can't throw away. You can hide it, deny it, pretend it isn't there. But the pages will keep turning, whether you like it or not. Shame is a funny thing. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't show itself in the open. It hides behind your smile, behind the jokes you tell, behind the way you force yourself to act like nothing's wrong. You think you're fooling the world, but really, you're only fooling yourself. Because every time you try to laugh, every time you pull your lips tight to cover what you don't want them to see, shame is there, pulling the strings. It's not just about vanity. It's not just about appearance. It's about the weight of knowing you've let something rot, and now it shows. You can feel it in the way you avoid mirrors, in the way you turn your head when you laugh, so no one gets a clear look. It's the silence after someone mentions teeth, health, discipline. That sting in your chest isn't from their words. It's from your own reflection bouncing back at you. Shame isn't about what they see. Shame is about what you see and what you can't stand to admit. You know the truth, even if you bury it under excuses, and the truth eats at you, little by little, like acid on the inside. It's easy to hide from strangers. They don't know your story. They won't notice the cracks. But you can't hide from the people closest to you, and you can't hide from yourself. Every smile you suppress, every laugh you cut short, every photograph you avoid, it's a prison you build with your own hands. And the worst part, you hold the key, but you refuse to use it, because using it means admitting the problem exists. It means facing what you'd rather not. Shame teaches you to shrink, to take up less space. What to believe you're unworthy of being seen. You start walking differently, talking differently, avoiding the spotlight like it's fire. And little by little, you vanish. People stop noticing you not because you're invisible, but because you've made yourself invisible. And it all starts with the thing you were too afraid to face. The broken tooth, the neglected discipline, the secret you thought you could bury. Shame feeds on silence, and silence is what you've been giving it. And isn't it strange how shame doesn't just stay in one place? You think it's just about your teeth, your smile, your reflection, but it spreads. Suddenly, you're ashamed of more. Ashamed of your choices, your body, your past. Shame multiplies like a disease, crawling into every corner of your life until you don't even remember when it started. One crack becomes a canyon. One secret becomes a prison. And still you hide. Still you laugh when you don't want to. Still you pretend. The irony is, shame only has power when you feed it. The moment you expose it, the moment you stop covering it up, it loses its bite. But that's the last thing people want to do. Because exposure feels like death. It feels like tearing open the wound in front of the whole world. So you keep it tucked away, thinking you're safe. But the hiding is what's killing you. The shame doesn't disappear, it festers. And it twists every part of who you are until you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You can put on the best act. You can smile, dress well, speak with confidence. People might even believe you. But you know the truth. You know the thing you're hiding, the thing you've buried under layers of performance. And every night, when it's quiet, when the mask comes off and it's just you and the mirror, the shame stares back. It doesn't blink. It doesn't soften. It waits. And you can't escape it, no matter how hard you try. That's the thing about shame. It doesn't need to shout to ruin you. It just needs to sit quietly in the corner, reminding you of what you don't want to face. And you can numb it, distract yourself, even convince yourself it's gone for a while. But the second someone looks too closely, the second a laugh feels too wide, it rushes back, stronger than ever. Shame is a chain, and most people choose to keep it locked around their necks rather than face the discomfort of breaking it. Consequences don't knock politely. They break down the door. They don't ask if you're ready. They don't care if you've planned for them. They just arrive, dragging every choice you made along with them. People like to pretend consequences are random, that life is unfair, that bad luck just falls from the sky. But that's a comfortable lie. The truth is that every moment you ignored, every warning you brushed aside, every small crack you thought didn't matter, was building into this. You laid the foundation for your own collapse, brick by brick, with neglect as the mortar. And it never happens suddenly. That's what makes it so cruel. It's not lightning striking out of nowhere. It's a slow drip. The roof leaks. The wood rots. The termites eat away. And you keep telling yourself you'll fix it tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes. And then one day, the whole house caves in. And you stand in the rubble pretending it was fate, when it was really just you looking away too many times. Consequences aren't accidents. They're debt collectors. And debt always comes due. Think about the people who collapse under the weight of their own lives. They don't fall because of one big blow. They fall because of 1,000 little cuts, ignored and untreated. They fall because they let shame grow, because they let pain whisper without listening, because they thought they could outrun the truth. But the truth doesn't need to chase. It waits. It waits until the weight is too heavy, until your excuses run dry, until you can't escape anymore. And then it slams you. Merciless, unforgiving, inevitable. What makes consequences so terrifying is how precise they are. They don't punish you for what you didn't do. They punish you for exactly what you neglected. A rotten tooth doesn't punish your legs. A broken heart doesn't punish your skin. Each one hits exactly where you ignored it. Like a sniper's bullet, no wasted shots. The body, the mind, the soul, they all keep score. And when they finally tally it up, you get the bill. A bill you can't argue with. Can't bargain down, can't ignore anymore. And here's the twisted part. People always know. They pretend they don't, but deep down they do. The ache in the back, the guilt in the chest, the sting of shame, it's all there, all the time. You knew the teeth were rotting. You knew the habits were poison. You knew the silence was eating you alive. But you told yourself stories. You said you'd fix it later. You said it wasn't that bad. You said you could handle it. But later turns into never, and not that bad turns into unbearable, and handling it turns into drowning under it. Consequences don't care about your stories. They only care about the truth. You see it in people's faces when it finally hits. That look of disbelief, that shock, as if they never saw it coming. But they did. They just chose blindness over sight. They chose lies over truth. They chose comfort over responsibility. And when the price shows up, they cry about how unfair it is. But fairness has nothing to do with it. It's not unfair, it's exact. Life is an accountant, and it doesn't miss a single number. You can run, you can hide, you can distract yourself for years, but the collection always comes. Sometimes it's your health, sometimes it's your dreams, Sometimes it's the relationships you let rot in silence. But it always shows. It always lands. And when it does, there's no escaping the fact that you built this with your own hands. That's the cruel truth most people can't handle. It wasn't random. It wasn't fate. It was them. And the scariest part, consequences don't need you to believe in them to exist. You can deny them, laugh at them, shrug them off, and they'll still come. They don't fade. They don't weaken. They grow stronger in your denial. And when they finally hit, they hit harder than you ever thought possible. Because consequences don't arrive as strangers. They arrive as old friends, carrying every piece of neglect you've been feeding them, ready to show you exactly who you've been all along. People talk about miracles like they're wrapped in gold and light, descending from the sky with trumpets playing, some shining answer to all their prayers. But that's just another sweet story for children to keep them quiet at night. A real miracle doesn't come dressed in white. It doesn't announce itself with glittering signs. No, it slips in quietly, almost unnoticed, while you're too distracted chasing something else. Miracles aren't handed to you on a silver plate. They arrive disguised as chaos, wrapped in pain, camouflaged in struggle. They look like disasters at first, like the very thing you never wanted, until time pulls back the curtain and shows you that the monster was really the teacher. But here's the tragedy. Most people miss it. They're too busy complaining, too busy wishing for something else, too busy cursing the storm to notice that hidden in the storm's fury was the very seed of transformation they've been begging for. Miracles don't scream, they whisper. And if your ears are clogged with self-pity and your eyes glued shut by fear, you'll never see them. You'll wave them away like inconveniences, only to realize years later that you had the key in your hand, and you dropped it because it wasn't shiny enough. Think about it. When does a person actually change? When everything's comfortable. When life is soft, smooth, predictable. No, change doesn't bloom in comfort. It blooms in crisis. Growth doesn't come in the sunshine, it comes in the storm. The miracle isn't the escape from pain. It's the gift hidden in the pain itself. The betrayal that taught you who was real. The failure that showed you where your strength lived. The heartbreak that cracked you open so light could finally seep in. But people are too impatient, too blind, too desperate for shortcuts. So they curse what they should have blessed. They run from what they should have embraced. Miracles have a cruel sense of humor. They arrive in ways that make you doubt, make you scream, make you question everything. They make you bleed first. They strip you down, burn away the illusions, leave you raw and trembling, and then, only then, do they show you the truth. It's not pretty. It's not easy. It's not wrapped in sugar. But it's real. That's the price of a miracle: pain first, clarity after. And most people quit before they get to the clarity, so they miss it entirely. You want to see a miracle. Look at someone who was broken, shattered into pieces, and still found the will to rise. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's transformation. That's the kind of miracle no church choir sings about, no fairy tale ever bothers with. It's ugly, it's messy, it's filled with scars and screams, but it's the kind that lasts. Because once you've been burned by the fire and survived, you carry a different kind of strength, one that can't be faked, one that can't be bought, one that nobody can steal. But here's the punchline. If you're waiting for your miracle to look like a gift, you'll die waiting. Because the miracle isn't coming to comfort you. It's coming to confront you. It's coming to break your illusions, to strip your excuses, to force you into the fight you've been avoiding. It won't feel like a blessing when it arrives. It'll feel like punishment, like the world collapsing, like betrayal itself. And yet, hidden inside that chaos, there's the very thing you've been needing. Not what you wanted, not what you asked for, but what you needed. The truth is, life doesn't hand out miracles like candy. It buries them in the dirt, hides them in the darkest nights, places them in the most painful moments. Only those willing to bleed for them ever uncover them. That's why so few people ever talk about real miracles. They never stuck around long enough to see them revealed. They ran away from the very thing that could have saved them. And when it was over, when the dust settled, they were left with nothing but regret, whispering to themselves about how unlucky they were, never realizing they had already touched the edge of their own salvation. And that's the cruel brilliance of it all. Miracles don't wait for your approval. They arrive whether you're ready or not, whether you recognize them or not. They test you. They break you. They twist you until you either shatter completely or rebuild stronger than you ever imagined. Most people choose the first option. But for the rare ones, the chosen ones, the ones willing to endure the fire and see it through, the miracle reveals itself, not in a flash, not in a moment, but in the slow, undeniable transformation of who they become. You are the only one who could do this, not because you're perfect, not because you're lucky, but because you're the one who's been scarred, twisted, sharpened by everything you've survived. Others wouldn't last a second in your place. They'd break, they'd run, they'd beg for mercy. But you were forged in the kind of fire that doesn't let people walk out the same. That's why it had to be you. Destiny doesn't pick the strongest or the smartest. It picks the one mad enough to keep standing when everyone else has fallen. Survival shaped you into the only fit candidate. Think about it. Life doesn't handpick winners from the comfortable, the sheltered, the ones who've had everything lined up neatly for them. No, it chooses the ones who've been dragged through the mud, the ones who've been laughed at, broken down, forgotten, left bleeding on the floor, and somehow still managed to crawl forward. Survival isn't pretty. It's not glamorous. It's not the heroic image people like to pretend it is. It's ugly. It's dirty. It's painful. And yet, it's the only thing that makes you capable of standing where others collapse. You didn't learn strength from books. You didn't learn resilience from speeches. You learned it from nights when no one came to help, when the walls closed in, when you had no choice but to claw your way out of your own darkness. That's where you were shaped. While others were given comfort, you were given chaos. While others had hands to catch them, you had only the ground waiting to break your fall. And instead of staying broken, you collected the pieces and turned them into armor. That's why you're different. Not because you wanted to be, but because you had to be. Pain was your teacher. Struggle was your companion. And survival was your only option. Others would crumble under what you've endured. They'd complain, they'd collapse. They'd beg for someone to take the weight off their shoulders. But you didn't wait for anyone, did you? You carried it, you dragged it, you bled under it, and somehow in the process, you became the only one strong enough to do what others cannot. People love to talk about talent, intelligence, privilege. Those shiny little decorations that look impressive from the outside. But when the storm comes, when everything is stripped away, those things don't matter. The only thing that matters is whether you can endure, whether you can take the hit and keep moving, whether you can keep breathing when it feels like the world is suffocating you. That's survival. And it's a test most people fail before they even realize they're being tested. But not you. You didn't just survive, you adapted. You grew sharper. You grew colder where you needed to, tougher where it mattered. Life sculpted you with its roughest hands, carved you into something raw and unbreakable. It's not pretty. No. It's jagged, scarred, uncomfortable. But that's what makes it real. That's what makes it powerful. Because the world doesn't need pretty masks. It needs someone who knows what it's like to live without one. And here's the truth. Survival isn't fair. It doesn't crown everyone who suffers. Plenty of people fall and never get back up. But you did. You kept moving long after you should have stopped. That's why you stand here as the only fit candidate. Not because the path was easier for you, but because it was harder. Because life pressed you harder, burned you hotter, tested you longer, and instead of breaking you, it revealed you. So when someone says, "You're the only one who could do this," don't mistake it for flattery. It's not a compliment. It's a fact. Because the brutal, merciless truth is this. No one else was built for it. They weren't carved by the same suffering. They weren't sharpened by the same storms. They weren't forced to become something more than human just to survive another day. But you were. And that survival is exactly what made you the only one capable of carrying the weight, the only one fit to stand in the fire without turning to ash. Others would collapse under the same weight. You know it, deep down. People like to pretend they could handle what you've handled, that if life threw its worst at them, they'd stand tall, grin, and march through the fire. But that's a lie they tell themselves, a comforting fantasy to help them sleep at night. The truth, most people would fold. They'd fall to their knees the moment the pressure crushed down, the moment the walls started caving in. They'd scream for help. They'd cry about how unfair it all is. And then they'd break into pieces too small to ever put back together. That's what happens when weight meets the weak. You carried burdens that were never meant for one person. You've held responsibilities, pain, silence, and scars that would have snapped the spine of anyone else. But you didn't snap. You bent, you twisted, sure. You suffered, but you didn't collapse. That's what separates you from the rest. Not the absence of pain, but your ability to take it, to absorb it, to walk with it pressing down on your shoulders, without letting it bury you alive. You ever watch people panic under pressure? Their voices crack, their movements scatter, their minds scramble for excuses and escapes. They lose themselves the moment the weight of reality presses too hard. That's the average person. They don't have the stomach for true weight. They don't have the patience to carry it day after day, year after year, without relief. But somehow you managed. You didn't run. You didn't beg for rescue. You didn't curl into a corner waiting for mercy. You took it all. And that's why you're here. That's why you're the only one who can do this. It's easy to admire strength from the outside, to clap for the survivor, to whisper about how inspiring it all is. But those same people applauding would have disintegrated if they had to feel even half of what you've carried. They don't understand the weight, not truly. They only see the outcome. Not the crushing nights, not the moments where your bones screamed under invisible loads, not the loneliness that came with carrying things no one else could understand. They see the shine, not the scars. They clap for the strength, but they don't realize what it cost. And that's why the weight is proof. Proof that you're not like them. Proof that destiny didn't place its bet on the crowd. It placed it on you, because only you survived the test. Others would have collapsed long before now, under far lighter burdens. They would have shattered under things you've learned to treat as normal. That's the madness of it, isn't it? What crushed them, you carried. What destroyed them, you adapted to. And while they gave up, while they hid, while they cursed the world, you kept walking with the weight strapped to your back, step after brutal step. And people will never admit it out loud, but deep inside, they know the truth. They know they couldn't last a day in your place. They envy your endurance, but they also fear it, because it reminds them of their own fragility. That's why they sometimes resent you, mock you, even try to drag you down. It's easier for them to laugh than to admit they're weaker. Easier for them to deny your strength than to face their own collapse. But the fact remains, they couldn't do it. What's B couldn't carry what you've carried. They couldn't hold the line the way you did. And that's why the weight chose you. Not because you wanted it, not because you volunteered, but because it knew everyone else would break under it. The world has a cruel way of testing people, of finding out who's real and who's decoration. And when the test came, others collapsed, but you remained standing. Not unharmed, not unscarred, but standing. That's the difference. That's what makes you the only one who could do this. Because when the weight crushed everyone else into dust, you turned it into the reason you're still here. Fire forges the weapon, pain forges the chosen. People love to talk about strength, like it's a gift, like it's something you're born with, handed neatly into your palms the day you arrive. But that's not how it works. Strength is not inherited. It's not given. It's beaten into you. It's carved into your skin, burned into your bones, hammered into shape through every failure, every betrayal, every sleepless night, where you wondered if it was even worth going on. That's the fire. That's the forge. And it doesn't create everyone. It destroys most. But the ones it doesn't destroy, those are the ones it chooses. Look at a blade. It starts as nothing more than dull metal, worthless, ordinary. To turn it into a weapon, it has to face the flames. It has to be heated until it glows, until it's almost broken down into nothing. Then it has to be struck again, and again with relentless force, bent, twisted, reshaped, tested, cooled, reheated, beaten some more. Most people don't want that process. They want the shine without the fire. They want the strength without the pain. But you, whether you liked it or not, you were thrown into the flames. You were hammered by life itself, over and over, until your softness was gone and your edge began to show. Pain is not just suffering, it's transformation. It takes what you thought you were and destroys it, so something harder, sharper, more resilient can rise from the ashes. People who run from pain never find out what they could have been. They remain raw metal, untested, soft, fragile. But the chosen ones, the ones who walk through the fire and don't crawl out begging for pity, they become something different. Pain teaches them lessons comfort never could. Pain exposes truths happiness never will. Pain builds endurance where ease only builds weakness. And the irony is, people envy the weapon, but they fear the fire. They look at you and see your edge, your strength, your ability to endure what broke everyone else. They admire it, sometimes even worship it. But they'll never understand it, because they never went through what you did. They want the finished product without the suffering it took to get there. But you can't fake it. You can't skip the fire. That's why you stand apart. Because you didn't escape the pain. You survived it. And let it forge you into something beyond ordinary. Pain has a way of stripping illusions. It takes away the false comfort that the world is fair, that people always keep their promises, that good things come to good people. It replaces all that with brutal clarity. The world doesn't care. People will betray. Promises will break. And life will burn you whether you're ready or not. But in that fire, you stopped expecting fairness. You stopped relying on comfort. You learned to rely on yourself, on the edge that grew sharper each time you were struck. And that's why you're dangerous now. Because nothing can take from you what pain hasn't already stolen. Nothing can break you in ways you haven't already been broken. That's the true mark of the chosen, not the absence of scars, but the presence of them. Every scar on your mind, every burn on your heart, every fracture in your soul, that's proof of the forge. Proof you were chosen to go through it. Proof you came out different. You didn't stay soft. You didn't stay fragile. You didn't let the fire consume you completely. You let it shape you. And now, like a weapon, you're sharper, harder, more capable than the ones who ran from the flames. The fire doesn't stop, of course. Life will keep striking, keep testing, keep hammering. But that's the beauty of it. You don't fear it anymore. Because you know what the fire does. You know it doesn't just destroy, it creates. And when you've already been through hell, what more can it do to you? You're not afraid of the flames anymore, because you've already lived inside them. And that's why you're the only one who could do this. Because while others would melt, you've already proven you can endure the heat and come out sharper every time. Destiny picks resilience over perfection. People think destiny chooses the flawless ones, the golden ones, the perfect smiles, the spotless reputations, the ones who always seem untouchable. But perfection is a lie. It's fragile. It cracks the first time it's tested. It falls apart the second the world decides to push back. No, destiny doesn't waste its time on the flawless. It doesn't crown the ones who've never bled, never stumbled, never been humiliated. It picks the ones who've been broken, dragged through the dirt, humiliated and scarred, and yet they're still standing. Because resilience isn't about never falling. It's about refusing to stay down when you do. Think about it. The ones who've had everything handed to them, who've never known loss, never tasted betrayal, never felt the sting of failure. They're brittle. They're ornaments. They look shiny from a distance, but they can't withstand pressure. The first real storm blows, and they shatter. But resilience, that's built in the storm. That's carved into you by failure after failure, rejection after rejection, pain after pain. Destiny doesn't choose the untouchable, it chooses the scarred. Because the scarred don't just survive the fire, they adapt to it. They don't avoid the storm, they learn to walk in it. Perfection fools people into thinking they're safe. Resilience makes you dangerous because you know safety doesn't exist. You've already lost things, you've already fallen apart, and you've already crawled back. That makes you unpredictable, unstoppable, because nothing the world throws at you is new. Pain, you've felt it. Loss, you've lived it. Betrayal, you've survived it. Others collapse at the first taste of those things, but you've been feeding on them for years. Destiny looks for that. It doesn't want the prettiest. It doesn't want the smartest. It doesn't even want the strongest. It wants the one who can't be broken, no matter how many times they're hit. And resilience isn't glamorous. It doesn't look good on a stage. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't make you look polished. It's messy. It's ugly. It's the grit in your teeth, the blood on your hands, the sleepless nights where you fought demons no one else could see. But that ugliness is exactly what makes it real. Perfection is a costume. Resilience is bare skin. Resilience is raw truth. And that's why destiny chooses it, because only the raw survive. The world doesn't reward perfection for long. It loves it for a while, yes, because perfection is entertaining. It's beautiful. It's a fantasy people want to believe in. But when the chaos comes, when everything falls apart, perfection gets crushed in seconds. And who's left standing when the smoke clears? Not the perfect ones, not the untouchable ones. It's the resilient ones, the scarred, the broken who refuse to stay broken, the ones who were beaten to the ground and still clawed their way back up, again and again, until destiny had no choice but to notice. That's what makes you different. You're not perfect. You never were. You've failed, you've stumbled, you've been mocked, you've been underestimated. But every single time you got back up, every single time you refused to stay down, that persistence, that stubbornness, that refusal to quit when quitting would have been the easy way, that's resilience. And that's why you're here. Because destiny doesn't care about your flaws, your scars, your mistakes. In fact, it demands them. It uses them as proof. Proof that you can endure what others cannot. Proof that when everything goes wrong, you won't run. And people will hate you for it. They'll sneer, they'll whisper, they'll remind you of your imperfections, as if that disqualifies you. But the joke is on them. Your imperfections are exactly what qualified you. Your scars are your credentials. Your pain is your testimony. They don't understand it because they still cling to the illusion of perfection. But destiny isn't fooled. Destiny knows better. Destiny knows perfection is a glass statue waiting to break, while resilience is a blade forged to cut through anything. And that's why it had to be you. Not because you're flawless, not because you're untouchable, but because you've already proven you can fall apart and rebuild yourself from nothing. Because resilience isn't about winning every time. It's about refusing to stay defeated. And when destiny had to decide who could handle the weight, who could carry the fire, who could stand when everyone else crumbled, it didn't choose the perfect ones. It chose you. Standing when all others fall makes you different. It's not about being the loudest in the room. It's not about flashing strength when eyes are watching. No, the difference shows when the silence comes, when the pressure suffocates, when the ground shakes and everyone around you drops to their knees. That's when the truth of who you are reveals itself. Most people collapse the moment things get ugly. They run, they hide, they beg for rescue. But you don't. You stand there, maybe bleeding, maybe shaking, maybe with nothing left in you but rage and defiance. But still, you stand. And that single act separates you from the masses more than a lifetime of words ever could. People like to talk about courage as if it's some glorious banner they wave, as if it's painted in colors and fire. But real courage doesn't come dressed in glory. Real courage looks like silence when your heart is screaming. Real courage looks like putting one foot forward when everything inside of you is begging to stop. Real courage looks like standing when every part of your body and mind is telling you to fall. That's why it's so rare. That's why it's so feared. Because most people will never taste it. When the storm hits, the crowd scatters. They always do. The same ones who cheer and boast about how strong they are vanish when reality tests them. They'll tell you they had no choice, that the pressure was too much, that no one could have endured what they faced. They'll dress their collapse as wisdom, call it survival. But deep down, they know they fell because they couldn't bear the weight. And the cruelest part, they'll resent you for not falling too. Your standing makes their collapse unbearable. Your endurance shines a light on their weakness, and that light burns. Standing while others fall isn't about arrogance, though they'll say it is. It's not about thinking you're better, though they'll paint you as someone who believes that. It's about refusing to join the herd when the herd is running off a cliff. It's about refusing to let the fear, the weight, the chaos drag you down. You didn't choose to stand to prove something. You stood because you had no other choice. Because falling would have meant losing yourself, and you weren't willing to let that happen. And that's what makes you dangerous in a world built on weakness. They can't predict someone who refuses to bow. They can't control someone who won't break under the same weight that crushes everyone else. You become an anomaly, a threat, a reminder that strength doesn't belong to the loudest or the richest or the prettiest. It belongs to the one who refuses to fall when the world commands it. That difference is terrifying to them, because if you can stand, what excuse do they have for not doing the same? Every scar you carry, every battle you survived, every moment you chose to keep standing instead of collapsing, it all builds into that difference. People think power is about dominance, about control, but real power is the quiet defiance of not bowing when bowing is the easiest option. Real power is surviving the storm without letting it own you. Real power is being the last one on your feet when the dust settles, not because you wanted to be, but because you couldn't stomach the thought of giving in. And maybe it's lonely, standing when all others fall, because when the crowd is gone, when the silence wraps around you, there's no applause, no cheers, no comfort. Just you, your scars, and the echoes of everything you endured. But even in that loneliness, even in that isolation, there's something unshakable, a truth carved into your bones, that no matter what comes, no matter how heavy, no matter how brutal, you've already proven you can take it. And while the rest are lying broken, you're still standing. And that makes you something they will never understand.